Would anyone like to volunteer a question first that I can kind of walk you through?
Question that doesn't need to be. It's easy to just
So you had what?
B squared.
Uh-huh.
Negative B
So minus V. Yeah.
equals minus 6. But I had already added the 6 first.
Yeah. So sorry, I don't know if this came up in the lesson or not yesterday, but one of the things that I hope you guys figured out, because your teacher's a bonehead, is that you do have to get all the stuff equal to 0. So I feel like all the examples I did with you, my bad, were already set equal to 0. The quadratic formula doesn't work if you have extraneous terms on the other side. So like this -6 has to be added across to right here like this. And remember that when he moves, he becomes a +6. And so our actual quadratic formula should be 3v squared minus v minus 6 equals 0. So are we on the same page with this? So Aiden, what we're doing is just going over like this is a question, and then I can go over one of yours, and I'm recording all this, so I figured like today, if I just get a bunch of questions answered, then maybe that will help us to kind of the catalyst, get the ball rolling. So, all right, Ms. Orozco, so what's A going to be?
A is squared.
No, A is 3. And what's B?
It's negative 1.
Uh-huh. You're fine. And then C is -6. Good. All right, so it's time to plug those suckers into the quadratic formula. So here we go.
So I put 1. X equals -1 plus or minus.
And you want to put V equals, not X equals, because your variables are V's this time. Not honestly, it doesn't really matter, but it kind of matters. So I'm sorry to interrupt you. So V equals 1 plus or minus the square root of what? It's +1, because what you first put inside the square root is b squared. And no matter what b is, if b is a positive or a negative, when you square it, it's going to wind up positive, right? And then we're going to put -4, and then we're going to set up multiplication, but I like to leave it empty just for a little bit. That's my AC. And then on the bottom, I have to do 2 times a, which is perfect. And then I'm going to go and now backfill my blanks. So in place of the first parentheses, I should put 3 because that's A. And in the back parentheses, I should put -6. So if we can get this far, like perfectly, then what we have to identify next is that this minus sign that I'm pointing to up here has to change to a plus. And the reason is because it's going to hit a negative somewhere down the line, right? So what really happens inside the square root is 1 plus 72. And that 72 is just the result of me multiplying these 3 numbers in the yellow cloud. Right? And I'm ignoring the negatives because I already used what I understand about negatives to put the plus. So I'm good to go. So still good?
Yeah.
Okay, so now we should have our final answer. And I'll tell you why it's our final answer is because the square root of 73 is dead. You can't break down a 73, and there's not ever going to be a Dorito because this green arrow is really important. There's never going to be a jailbreak number that introduces himself into that spot for you to be able to make a Dorito out of him.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah,
It could just be finished at that point.
It's done. Hey, and one other thing I wanted to tell you guys, if you've been ignoring me, just give me just a quick 30 seconds, if you'd be so kind. And Trinity probably doesn't need to hear this because she's already gotten some right. So never mind, Trinity, you can ignore me. But if you want to, when you're trying to type something into Delta Math, let me see if I can show you, if I can efficiently get there. The quadratic formula. Let me edit, sorry, and go into the skills. Okay, so if you'd be so kind, just indulge me here. I want to show you there's a way to do this on your keyboard. So I'm just making this up, but let's just say that the answer to this problem was like r equals -5 plus or minus 3 square roots of 2 over 4. So what happens with this, you guys will all experience this, is when you go to type it in, if you type, watch this, you go -5, and then you hit the little plus or minus button, and then you do 3 square roots of 2. And then you think, oh, I have to divide all of that by 4. You hit divided by, and look at that little train wreck. So I wanted to tell you guys how to fix that. And if I hadn't been busy yesterday, I would have like called the classroom and spoken, but I'm just trying to get stuff done. So here's the trick. I'm going to zoom in for you a little bit. If you want all that to be divided by 4, what you do is just take your mouse and highlight it all like this, and then hit divided by, and it puts it all on the top of the fraction. And then you can divide it by 4. You can also, there's another way to do it too. Like Trinity might have just figured this out. You can just hit the divided by sign right away and then start filling in the fraction. And another workaround, if you need another one, would be to use parentheses. So if you did like -5 plus or minus 3 square root of 2, and then you close the parentheses and hit divided by, you see how it forces, the parentheses force it all to go to the top. You don't have to erase the parentheses. They're not going to make it wrong. No, they're not hurting anything there. So those are your 3 options to get the answers formatted correctly. Who else would like to go over a problem? Okay. Okay. Would you read it to me?
4t squared
Okay.
plus 4t plus 1 equals 0.
Okay, so first off, the good news is that it's already set equal to 0. What do you need, bud? Yep. Stay off your phone, okay? So we're ready to rock and roll here, aren't we, bud? So we're ready just to find our A and our B and our C. What's A?
4.
B?
4.
C? Okay, so we're ready to rock and roll. So here we go. T equals what?
-4.
Yeah. Plus or minus?
-4.
Mm-mm.
Oh, 16.
Right. The first thing you put is B squared. And then you put -4 and then 2 sets of multiplication parentheses and then all over 2 times A, which is
8.
And now I'm going to go backfill my parentheses. What goes in there?
4.
Nice job. You guys should all pay attention to this one. Every one of you, even if you've got a few done, you should all pause. I'm really glad that we're getting this one on the recording too. Really stop what you're doing, no matter what. Listen, this is a weird one, okay? Dalton found himself a pretty special problem here. So the problem is up on the board, and then the first step is over on the right. So again, stay with me, please. Something cool happens. You'll notice that this minus right here is not going to change, right? So what really is happening inside the square root is 16 minus 4 times 4, which is 16. And I don't mean to insult you, but what's 16 minus 16? And what, my friends, is the square root of 0? Yes, and let me ask you another question. What happens to something when I add 0 to it? What happens when I subtract 0 from it? Okay, so I want you to take a look at something real quick, and then we're going to come to a conclusion here. What this would say right now is -4 plus or minus 0 over 8. But what you just got done telling me is that if I were to perform the actions in that green cloud, what would happen? Nothing, which means that in a case like this, when your square root goes to 0, you actually only get one answer, and it looks like that. You would, of course, reduce it to -1/2, but the point is that you don't get like the normal answer where it's like blah, 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 plus or minus this. That's the only time that this will happen to you is when the discriminant, the stuff inside the square root sign goes to 0, then you can just omit all that back end stuff and just, it's a basic fraction. But now you know. So, and that will happen. It might not happen to all of you because as you know, with delta, it's just luck of the draw. But if that happens to you, then just basically take off the plus or minus 0 and just the answer is just the part in front. So I hope that helps you there, Foxy. Aiden, would you like to go over a problem together? Okay. What you have for me? Equals 0, I assume? Okay. So what's your A value? B? Oh, so it doesn't equal 0. So it equals 4C? Oh gosh. Okay, interesting development. So we can't proceed until we get all of the stuff to equal 0. So you understand, I think, that we have to take this positive 4C and turn it into over there a minus 4, yes, which combines. So our ready to go is C squared minus 3C minus 19. Now are we good to go? Okay, so what's A? B, C, good. So it's time to plug those into the quadratic formula. And the quadratic formula says that C will equal the result of all this stuff we're about to do. So what goes first? Good. The square root of. What's going to go on bottom? Nice. And then when I go fill those in, the A and the C, what will I put? Good. So here's a question for you. And I always would ask this question at this point, because this, I'm trying to condition you into always thinking the right next thought. And the right next thought at this point, 100% of the time, is that thing I'm pointing at. Will it stay a minus or switch? It is. So really what's happening inside of the square root is I've got a problem that looks like this, 9 plus 76. You agree? 4 times 1 is 4. 4 times 19 is 76. And then I have to do 9 plus 76, which is 85. What did you do? Oh, yeah, that's happened before. So you probably had like 2 root 19 for your, yeah. So what you're going to wind up with is C equals 3 plus or minus the square root of 85, all divided by 2. And at this point, you would presumably go on a mad dash to say, can I break down the number 85? And when you look at your times table chart, right, you're going to realize 5 times 17 is the only way to make 85, which doesn't do me any good. So you're done. You're welcome. Haley, are you doing okay?
I think I did not.
Okay. Can I start from the beginning of your problem? Is that okay?
Yeah.
Could you read it to me just right off the screen? Equals 2, you say. Okay. So what do we do first? So we have 4a squared minus 14a plus 11 equals 0. So now it's time to go through and figure out who everybody is. What's a? 4. B? Nice. C? Good job. Okay, so now it's time to plug it in. So we are going to write a equals, and we are off. What goes first? Nice. Plus or minus the square root of, nice job, minus 4 blank blank. And then on the bottom, I have to do 2 times a, which is, no, it's 2a. So 2 times 4. So let's go ahead and finish this together. So it sounds to me like you did 2b on the bottom instead of not, 2b, not 2b. Never mind, I'm done. Nothing to see here. And then I'm going to go fill in those parentheses with the numbers A and C. So I'm going to put a 4 in one of them and an 11 in the other. And you're going to have another one of these ones where, actually, no, you're not. You're going to get close. But let me ask you, will that minus right there, will he stay minusy or will he switch plusy?
Um,
He'll stay minusy, right? Because he's never going to encounter a negative. So using, I mean, I assume you'd want a calculator, but like this winds up being 196 minus 176 because you got to do 4 times 4 is 16 times 11. So and a 196 minus 176 is a nice, beautiful 20. So is this all kind of matching up with what you had other than your little oopsie on the bottom? Okay, and how did you deal with the square root of 20?
I did. 4.
So you did the square root of 4 times 5 like that. And then what did that become? Nice. Excellent stuff, Haley. So I'm gonna take out this old square root of 20 and put a nice new and improved 2 root 5. And I do believe there's a little more meat on the bone. What do we have to do? You betcha. Because a number broke out of the root, then he completes the Dorito. If no number ever breaks out, then the Dorito is non-existent. But yours, those can all be divided by 2, eh?
Yep.
So let's do it. What do we get?
7.
And you got to leave the root 5, right? Over 4. Beautiful stuff. Based on that conversation we just had, it sounds to me like you totally know what you're doing. You just spazzed out on the bottom. Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Sure.
So, I have my Y.
We just start from the beginning. Would that be
Yeah.
okay with you? Could you read it to me just straight off the screen?
Y.
Okay.
Minus 9Y plus 1.
So what would we do first?
Take it to
So we would have y squared
minus 3Y.
minus 9y.
9Y. Minus 1.
Nice job. I was really terrified you were going to say plus 3, and I was like, please don't let her say plus 3. Please don't.
Yeah.
You didn't. You subtracted it across. Nice job. So we got to find a, b, and c, right? A is not y to the second. A is the. So you should take note of this mental paper. Otherwise, A, B, and C are not. They don't contain the letters, dude. They're the numbers in front. I'm gonna write them up here in yellow for you so you can really see them. What you see on the TV in yellow are A, B, and C. Never, ever, ever include like x squared or y squared or y. Just the yellow numbers are the A, the B, and C. You with me? So let's try this thing. Let's check it out. Let's keep going. What's A?
One,
B,
minus 9,
C.
minus 1.
Okay, great. So now that we have that in order, that's always like the pre-work, and now comes the actual work. So we have C. No, that's not your variable, is it? Y, excuse me. So we have y equals. What do we do first?
Opposite of, right?
Huh?
But, minus your plus first equation.
Plus or minus?
Is there a name for that sign?
It's called plus or minus.
Plus or minus?
Yep.
All big big 81.
Nice job.
4, and then
Minus.
minus 4. And then 2 and B shows
All divided by.
1.
The bottom of the quadratic formula is
2A.
2 times A. And if A is 1, what's 2 times 1?
2.
Right, so we need to have a 2. So far we're doing pretty well, and now we have to go up and backfill the spaces in the or in the square root.
So you put one,
Mhm.
and then a -1 on the other.
I agree. Now, I'm going to switch colors here for a quick second, just because I really want that to stand out. Why is that such an important -1?
Because
What does that mean? Like he has a big, powerful impact on this
it means,
problem.
our answer is 50 times the switch.
Right. So
Right.
specifically, this
It's gonna
sign
become a positive
right
one.
here is going to become a plus.
Okay.
Good. We clear?
Yeah.
And that only happens when that number in the back is a negative. Okay.
And that goes back to factoring.
What do you mean by that?
When we did like the factoring, that's how you knew like what your sign was gonna be if you looked in that front.
No, this has nothing to do with that at all, actually. This is just a matter of look in this green cloud. The green cloud is just a multiplication problem. So maybe you're saying what the right thing is, just in a really weird way. But do you see inside the green cloud, it's just three numbers being multiplied, right? -4 times 1 times -1. And what we know in life and in math is that if you multiply some numbers together, if two of them are negatives,
To make a positive.
they're going to make a positive.
So do you subtract this one from the 81 one?
No, what happens is, and this is real, I'm really glad you're asking this question, is so I'm going to backtrack a little bit. I'm going to get rid of that cloud, and I'm even going to get rid of that big ugly yellow arrow. I'm really, really glad you're asking this question. I'm going to show you this, I think, the best way for you to do this. So step one, always, is to look at this sign every time and ask yourself, is it going to stay as a minus or is it going to switch to plus? And as we've already discussed, it's going to switch to plus. I'm going to show you the best step. If you follow these steps every time, you're going to be fine. The next thing I want you to do is copy down the number 81. And then you said that that minus is going to change to plus, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I want you just to change it to plus. Now, the next thing I want you to do is multiply these numbers together in the yellow circles. This one times this one times this one. Please, 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 please note that I am not worried about signs anymore, okay? Because we already did all the signy stuff. We figured out that the minus and the negative are going to make sweet math love it and turn into a plus, right? It is. Did that feel like that made sense to you?
Yes.
Once you figure out if that's a plus or a minus in the middle of those, then you can just basically ignore the signs for the next 10 seconds and just do the math. Good.
Mm-hmm.
So now what's 81 plus 4? So at this point in time, there's always the next consideration. And I mean always the next consideration is, what can I do with the square root of 85? Or what can I do if it was a 40 or 120 or something like that? So if you go to your times table sheet, that paper that has like all the different factor pairs that multiply to make a different number, if you look underneath the number 85, you only see, well, you see 1 times 85, but yes, you only, of course, would ignore that. And so I ask you, are 5 and 17 useful to us? They are not. Because if I took the square root of 85 and I broke it into the square root of 5 times 17, why am I not interested in either of those numbers? Because they're not on the red list. And I say to you, if they're the only way to multiply to make 85, if they're my only guys, you're my only hope. And I look at the only hope I have is 5 and 17. And if they're trash, then that means that 85 is done. And it means that this is the final answer. It means you cannot go any further. Like there's not even going to be a Dorito in this problem because no one can break out of the jail, the root 85 jail. What's up, man? ¿Quieres hacer otro problema juntos? ¿Está bien?
But I
squared
or squared, I'm sorry, plus R minus 2,
equals,
0.
okay, so we're all set and equal to
Or
0.
something.
So did something strange happen in this
Well,
problem?
when we did the formula, it's not the answer. So then I went in and I did, like you said, R equals 1 plus or minus 3 over 10, which would be,
Let's go through your work. I'm feeling like something interesting has happened. So something I think, because I'm looking at this and I don't think this is not factorable. I can tell from looking at it. So if you're coming up with,
that's what we did on there, 5.
yeah,
I don't know
this,
why I put a 1, because we have 1 minus 4, and I put a 1 instead.
but you're still saying like 4. And do you not have a square root in your answer anywhere?
Well, when I did it round the first time, I got 9 over 10. And R equals 1 plus or minus 9 over 10.
So you don't
because
have
we only
any,
had 3.
but yeah, then we need to go through this. Let's go through it from the beginning because somewhere something else has gone wrong. Because this, you should have a, when I look at this, it cannot be factored, which tells me that,
Well, I had been the 1 to use the R. instead of 5.
okay, but this, okay, but this, okay. So
When
you,
I put it in the
okay,
the multiplication brackets.
right.
Negative
I see what
4
you're
over
saying. Yeah,
1.
you put B instead of A, right? Do you want to work it out or you, okay. So A is 5, right? And B is 1 and C is -2. So we're going to have R equals what? What did we put first?
The first thing I did was R equals 1.
Uh-uh. It's -1 because it's the opposite of B. And if B is 1, then the first thing you do is put the opposite of B. So that was something you said earlier that you thought that because the formula says -B plus or minus blah, 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 understand that that doesn't mean you're always going to put a negative number there. Like in this case, it does, but it means to do the opposite of whatever B already is. And if B is 1, then you need to put -1. If B had been -1, then we would have put +1. And then we're going to put plus or minus the square root of what? Good. All divided by.
Yeah.
Nice. So, um, so you see that this is going to change to a plus, right? So it really inside the square root is 1 plus 40, which is great news actually, because 41 is pure trash. And honestly, if we can save ourselves some time at the end, that's a bonus. And in this case, the 41 that you're going to get is just dead. Those are the best ones because then when you get to this point right here, then you can say done because you know you can't break down that root. And the only way the Dorito and all that reducing stuff is going to come in is if the root can break, and that root's dead. What's up, Lawson?
I don't know. That is wrong.
Which one? You're going to have to start over because we had some sort of explosion in the corner of the room. So could you start over? -K minus 3K minus. Okay, so is this, are you sure like you didn't? Okay, so are you sure now that what I have on the TV is a perfect match for what you have on your little TV?
Yeah.
Okay. So this is an interesting question, and I'm going to have to assume that the first thing that you did is you took this red egg and you moved it by adding it over here. Is that a safe assumption? So you should have gotten 4K squareds minus 3Ks minus 2. Are we in agreement so far?
Yes.
That's great news. Okay, so at this point in time, we're ready to rock and roll. I'm gonna pour a little 3:20 in the afternoon coffee. What is your A value?
Four.
Okay, what's your B? And what's your C?
Negative.
Okay, good. So if we know A, B, and C, 4, -3, and -2, we should be able to plug them right in. So let's hit this. So we're gonna say K equals what?
That's 9 minus 4, 70 brackets. I already took it up, no mistake.
Did you put 4 on the bottom
Yeah,
when you should have put 8?
yeah.
What did you put in your empty parentheses?
4 and -2.
So let me ask you a question there. What are you feeling about that minus sign right there?
So minus 7 minus positive.
A plus. Good. So really inside the square root sign, I have to do 9 plus 32, right? 4 times 4 is 16 times 2 is 32. Bless you. And what's 9 plus 32? Yeah. So 3 plus or minus the square root of 41 over 8. And it sounds to me from talking to you like you had all of that, you just spazzed out and put 4 on the bottom instead of 8. So love that my coffee's still hot at 3:30 in the afternoon. What's up? Of course we can. Bet. Could you read it to me just square off the screen? Minus n equals 0. Also equals -n. Okay. So can I assume that you added the n back across and that you got 5n squared minus 29n plus 20 equals 0? Okay, great. So A is 5, B is 29, right? And then C is... So I can say that the bad news here is that we're going to be working with some big numbers, but I'm willing to bet that in the end, it's not going to be that bad, right? Did I mess up already? Roger that. So we're going to have big numbers, right? That's okay. We're not scared. So here we go. N equals, what do we do first? Square root of, good job, 841. And this is usually it right here. No matter how many thousands of times I try to teach this part, this is usually where the mistakes happen. And that's all divided by 2 times 5. It always happens right here. So what are we going to fill into those two parenthesis sets? Good. So now comes the question that I will never cease to ask ever until the day I retire. Is that going to stay or switch? It is. So really that's why I said I'm not too worried about the big numbers here because they are going to shrink down. Because if minus doesn't switch to plus, then we're going to get some smaller stuff, right? So what's happening in there is 841 minus 400. And 841 minus 400 is 441. I have one more opportunity to interrupt you if you're interested, because this has not come up yet today. So you're all welcome to come along for the ride. Because these things that happen, they're going to eventually happen to you. Like that thing with the 0. Maybe you've gotten one, maybe you haven't, but you're going to get it eventually, probably. And this one is happening to Aiden right now. And it might not look significant to you, but let me get you caught up to where we are. Aiden and I have this. We have n equals 29 plus or minus the square root of 441. And you might say, like, why are you interrupting me for this? You might even be ignoring me because you don't need this. But I'm telling you, I'm interrupting you for a reason, because what is significant about that square root? Okay, so I will say in your defense, you're at a disadvantage here because if you were to look back at your notes, the very last number, if we could look at your red list, it ends at 400. So like the last few numbers on your red list were like, okay, we had 324, we had 361, and we ended at 400. But surprise, Frank, joke's on you. If we had gone on further, the next number on the red list is 441. And you're like, well, that's not fair. Well, you could always add it to your notes. And as we encounter larger red numbers, it's nice to add them to our resources because now that I know that 441 is a red, then I look at Aiden's problem and I say, hang on a second, shut the front door. Is what you're telling me that I can actually just take the square root of 441 and have it just equal a whole number? Yeah, it's just 21. Just 21. No tree, you don't break it down, you don't simplify, you just change it. And so if I swap out Aiden's square root of 441 with just the number 21, this becomes one of those pathway problems where because there are no roots left in the problem, these are where we trace the pathways. So I'm going to take and color code this for you. I'm first going to highlight the red, the plus pathway, and I need you to help me with some math. Follow the plus pathway. What's 29 plus 21? And what's 50 over 10? So one of your answers is n equals just 5, right? Just 5. Beautiful. And now I'm going to do the other one with the yellow. That's the second pathway. 29 minus 21 is 8. And what does 8 over 10 simplify to? Those are your answers. So what you're going to do in Delta is you're going to click add a solution, and then you'll put one of those in each box. Got it? We're covering all the bases here today. This is great. Like we're getting examples of all the stuff I wanted to talk about. I'm going to pause this real quick because I'm going to go through a question with Diedrich on his whiteboard, but then I'll be right back with you guys, all of you. Hey, here's another, every time this happens, I'm going to interrupt you. And every time I interrupt you, I want you to know it's for a good cause. I'm interrupting you. If you have this inside your square root, I mean, I'm just making this up. You did something wrong. There's going to come a day, maybe, I don't know if I'll do this in your class. We definitely do it in Algebra 2. But in this class, I don't know if we're going to delve into this situation. These are called imaginary numbers. And unless we know how to use imaginary numbers, you can't take the square root of negative 56 or whatever the case may be. So what I'm telling you is if in the course of your workings, you have a situation where you have a smaller number minus a bigger number, you understand because you're like, you know, in high school that a smaller number minus a bigger number is literally always a negative, right? If you get a negative inside your square root, you did something wrong. Now that will not apply to some other classes that you might want to take someday. But for now, with where we're at, Aubrey, you did something else wrong. So could you read me your question off your screen real quick? Just right off the screen. 5 what squared?
5c.
C squared, thank you. Got it. Okay. So I think what you did wrong is you, when all is said and done, I'm going to ask you a question here, young lady. What is 12 squared? Don't say 24 again because you've already tried that on me once. Yeah. Oops, she did it again. I just Britney Spears to you. Yeah. You did. You hit me with the reverse Britney. Boxer, you got a question, bro? I'm ready.
Okay.
Estoy listo.
Plus 3.
3?
Plus 6. Oh, it's 22. It's 22.
What is happening right now? What? Okay, I just have to start over. Okay, just off the screen. What does it say?
15 plus 22 plus 3 plus 3.
All right. Got off to a rough start, but now we're back in the saddle again. So do you agree that we're going to move the 6z across?
Yes.
Okay, so we're going to wind up with 16 of those z squareds. And then when we bring the 6z across, we have to change him to a minus. So he drops that guy to a plus 16z. Are we ready to rock and roll from here? Okay, so what's A? What's B? What's C?
30.
All right. So here we go again. Z equals.
Negative 6
Uh-huh.
plus 2.
Uh-huh. Nice. And what goes in the two blanks?
16 and 30.
Now, because neither of those red numbers are negatives, what does that mean about the fate of this minus sign?
It's gonna
He's going to stay a minus, right? He's like, I have no reason to ever switch to a plus because if you follow at the back end of me over here, there's no negatives for me to smack, right? So this will just wind up being basic subtraction. So it's adios, hasta mañana. Oh, you're fine. So we have 256 minus, and then 64 and 3 make 192. And if you subtract those, you're going to get 64. So I can see why you'd want to go over this because this is one of those pathway problems where, so we wind up with z equals negative 16 plus or minus the square root of 64.
Okay.
And you just have to train yourself to understand the significance of what's on the board on your paper. And that is that 64 is not like other numbers. He's not one where we think about, gosh, how can I break it down? He's literally on the red list, right? What is the square root of 64? It is. So I'm going to take that square root of 64 and I'm going to say, yeah, you're no longer, your services are no longer needed here. You just equal a nice normal number, a non-root number, an 8. That's marvelous. Do you know what I mean when I say it's a pathway problem? Okay,
Yeah,
so
2 here.
you do. And you always have two answers, but with these, you want to pull them apart and see them separated from each other. So let's trace the plus pathway first. What is negative 16 plus 8?
Negative.
And then you stick that over 32, and then you hope and pray that all these years of education have led you to be able to reduce that little fraction. What do you get?
460.
Go further.
48.
No, and now you went off the rails. Hey, look at these two original numbers. How about you do me a smalled here and just divide them both by 8? Let's cut right to the chase. Just divide them by 8.
160. One.
Okay, so we now have an answer, and I'm going to put a pretty little red box around it. There's one down, one to go. Now we're going to trace the other pathway, and I'll circle him in green. And again, the math has to go well, my friend. What is negative 16 minus 8?
1 negative.
And hopefully this one goes a little smoother than the last one. Let's divide those numbers both by 8. Again, go big or go home. There's no sense in reducing a fraction take 5 minutes. Just go in and divide them both by 8. Get her done. What do you get? So our answers are in those pretty little red and green boxes over on the right-hand side of the screen. Each one gets his own box. Haley, I think you were waiting first, and then Aubrey. You want to go for a problem? Sure thing. Could you just right off the screen read it to me? Did I get it? I tried to figure out if you were saying V or B, and then by the time I figured out that I was trying to store all the words you said in my brain and recite them. What's that? God dang it. It's a B? Enunciate 5b squared plus 10b. So what is step 1?
getting the negative.
Good job. So we have 5 bacon squared plus 10 boogers plus 1 equals 0. So now it's time to go through and find our A, B, and C values. What's A? B? C? Okay, so we should be good from here. Let's hope and pray. B equals what? What do we do first? Plus or minus? You got it? What's that all divided by? Job. And I'm going to go backfill my parentheses with A and C. So because neither of the red numbers up there are negatives, what does that mean about the minus sign that's in the square root? It is. It's destined to stay. So really at the end of the day, what this winds up being is 100 minus 20, which is 80. Oh. So I am curious though, I want to finish this out with you. I mean, I don't want to be annoying or help too much, but are you comfortable? Do you recognize the square root of 80? It's not on the red list, but it's one of our death numbers. You might remember that from a while back. 80 is really hard to break down unless you just know what it is. It wouldn't. And that's actually why I had you put it in your notes as a death number, is because I've had people try to sell me that bill of goods thousands of times. And 4 and 20, the reason why 80 makes the cut as a death number, that first day when we took notes, I tried to separate out a handful. There were like 7 or 8 or 9 numbers where I specifically said, these are the ones that are going to eat your lunch. 80 is one of them because people love 4 times 20. And what they forget is that it should be 16 times 5. And if you pick 4 and 20, you're going to get it wrong because the 20 still has life to live. Like it still has stuff to give, right? So you have to memorize or put in your notes right there on a sheet somewhere, the death numbers, so that you always pluck them. So the square root of 80 up here needs to be replaced with 4 root 5. And then at this point, it's time to make a Dorito. And you divide those all by 2 and you'll be done. I don't have enough time to really go over any more problems with you, but we'll keep working tomorrow. Is anyone like past the halfway point? Do you feel better today than you did 24 hours ago? Oh, I'm so glad. So don't worry about these. Don't work on them or anything like that. We'll just have another day tomorrow, just like today. You probably won't need quite as much help tomorrow as you did today. That's my guess. Ending recording now.